Type 1 diabetes isn't about blood sugars. The ancient Greek physician, the father of medicine, once said, "All disease begins in the gut," and I believe this to an extent, but I believe it begins with a stressor. Do you remember your first memory? What happened? How did you feel? On November 22nd, 1991, I remember my first memory. I remember being really cold. I remember I was wearing my favorite romper with floral pants and a sewn-in shirt. And I remember sitting on a pediatrician's patient's bed with my arms crossed and shaking. I remember how my pediatrician came in that room and he said, "Kelly, like your father, you have type 1 diabetes." He swiftly turned to my mom and said, "I had spoken to Children's Hospital and they're expecting you." That next day, on November 23rd, I celebrated my 8th birthday in a hospital bed. I got a lot of presents. However, it wasn't until decades later that I realized the best gift I got that day was my type 1 diabetes. My type 1 diabetes has taught me to be brave. My type 1 diabetes has taught me how to be resilient. And my type 1 diabetes has fueled me with passion to change the world one day at a time. Now, it is no coincidence that I got type 1 diabetes. 2 weeks prior, a virus hit my family, and it went through every family member, and it hit me last, and it hit me the hardest. There's a body of research showing that anyone with an autoimmune disease sits on 3 pillars. 1, some form of genetics. 2, some form of a leaky or permeable gut. And 3, some form of stressor. In today's presentation on how type 1 diabetes isn't about blood sugar, I have 3 key messages for you. The first message is eating is a necessity, but knowing how is an art. My second message for you is we need to be in tune with ourselves so we can advocate our needs. And my third message for you today is we need to prevent disease, not treat disease. Now, what do I mean by eating is a necessity, but knowing how is an art? Eating is a necessity, but knowing how to use food as medicine is an art. What is the food is thy medicine is thy food. And what is one person's medicine can be another person's poison. When working with private clients, there's a number of lessons I go through. One of those lessons is a calorie in the body doesn't equal a calorie out of the body. And similarly, a carbohydrate doesn't equal a carbohydrate for blood sugar control. And you might be thinking, well, Kelly, I don't have type 1 diabetes, or I don't have diabetes. How does this relate to me? I'm sad to say that 3 out of 4 Americans have a blood sugar spike on a daily basis. And blood sugar spikes accelerate aging. Blood sugar spikes accelerate oxidative stress, inflammation, and disease in the body. And when I go through these lessons of how a calorie in the body doesn't equal a calorie out of the bottle, an example would be, let's say I have 100 calories of almonds. I consume 100 calories of almonds, and the body needs to work really hard on breaking down that protein into amino acids. My body will take that fiber and use that fiber as fuel for my gut bacteria. And in the end, my body won't have all those 100 calories for energy. The body has to work hard to break it down. And similarly, how a carbohydrate doesn't equal a carbohydrate for blood sugar management. There's limitations. There's limitations in counting carbohydrates. There's a number of examples I can go into, but I'm going to give you 3 lessons under how a carbohydrate doesn't equal a carbohydrate for blood sugar control. The first one is, has anyone ever counted calories? Has anyone ever counted calories for health? The FDA allows a food label to be off by 20%. It is legal for a food label to be off by 20%. Now, shortly after I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, I remember I was in a solid routine of my snacks, my meals at specific times of the day. And one evening, I went to the kitchen and I consumed 15 grams of carbohydrates. And a few hours later, I was found seizuring in my sleep. Now, I've seizured more than I can count on one hand from low blood sugar. And my type 1 diabetes isn't a math equation. Counting my carbohydrates will not be the answer to control my blood sugars. There's limitations of counting carbohydrates for blood sugar management, and one carbohydrate doesn't equal another carbohydrate. Another example is, I had a client, she came to me. She came to me for fertility, and she wanted to balance her hormones, she wanted to optimize her health, and to successfully carry a baby. And after our first session, after going through our initial consult and further sessions, I was very curious. I was very curious how well she was tolerating gluten. I was really curious of the health of her gut. So we did a lab, my next slide here. I don't expect you to look at those details. The point is just to show that we did a lab, and she had no digestive symptoms. She had no digestive symptoms of not tolerating gluten or wheat. And indeed, she was positive. She was positive she didn't tolerate gluten or wheat at all. And she said, what do I have to lose? I'm going to pull this out of my diet to optimize my hormones, to optimize my chances of carrying a baby successfully. So she pulled it out. A few weeks later, she was wearing a continuous glucose monitor on her arm. A continuous glucose monitor reads my blood sugars every 5 minutes. It talks to my phone, and then it talks to my watch. And she was wearing her continuous glucose monitor, and she was at a work luncheon. And this work luncheon was only bagel sandwiches. So she was hungry, and she went with the best choice possible. So she took a bagel sandwich, one that had protein, one that had fiber and lettuce and tomatoes and vegetables on top, and she ate it as an open-faced sandwich. Now, she knew that she didn't tolerate gluten or wheat, but she removed half of it or more, and it wasn't a lot of carbohydrates. However, she messaged me immediately in fear because her blood sugar spiked over 100 points. What is one person's medicine is another person's poison. Counting carbohydrates is not the answer for blood sugar control. My third example of limitations of counting carbohydrates is, oops, I went one too many slides, is have you ever eaten a naked carb? When I work with clients, I'm always like, no naked carbs. Have you ever eaten a naked carb? Maybe before carpool. Maybe one night you have carpool and you got to pick up the neighbor kids and go to soccer practice for an hour, and you run to the pantry and you grab some pretzels, and let's call them gluten-free pretzels. Or let's say you're working from home, and in between meetings, you quickly run down to the pantry and you grab something salty like potato chips. Or maybe you wake up and you eat a bowl of oatmeal. Now, these three examples is a form of eating naked carbs. And naked carbs, as someone with type 1 diabetes, as the average American with a blood sugar spike on a daily basis, will spike blood sugars like you see here. However, carbs are not the enemy. We can design the way we eat. We can have food sequence to optimize how we consume our food, to optimize our hormones, to optimize our blood sugar, to optimize our health. Now, how would I change something? Say, let's use the oatmeal. I love oatmeal. How would I turn that blood sugar spike, that black diamond, abrupt, scary, tall, steep, into a bunny hill? We could place protein. We can eat the protein before those oats. Maybe I make 2 scrambled eggs. If I eat 2 scrambled eggs before those oats, I'll see that black diamond turn into a bunny hill. And that's what I work with clients on. There's an art of eating. There's an art of eating. And even if you don't like eggs, there's other ways to manipulate things. That oatmeal, for example, you can reduce the half a cup of oats to a third a cup of oats, add some chia seeds, add some flax seeds, nice and warm, maybe stir in some grass-fed butter. That black diamond will turn into a bunny hill. Eating is a necessity, knowing how is an art. What is one person's medicine is another person's poison, and we need to learn how to use food as medicine. My second message is we need to be in tune with ourselves so we can advocate our needs. We're all really busy. We're all really busy. Another thing I often tell my clients is, 1, no naked carbs, and 2, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. We need to create space in our lives. We need to be present in our bodies so we can tell how food makes us feel, how we feel. My pediatrician can't be a better advocate for me from seizuring at 3 in the morning. I only know what it's like to feel in my body. We need to be present in our bodies so we can speak up and be confident, ask questions, be organized, and optimize our well-being. One example, when I was a student getting my bachelor's in science in dietetics, I remember studying a lot for an exam on type 1 diabetes. And you might be wondering, why is she studying so much for type 1 diabetes? She's had it for a few decades. And believe it or not, while I was studying, I knew I wanted to get a good grade. And what a textbook was teaching future dietitians was not how I was succeeding in my blood sugar control. I've learned over the years to chase results. And I 100% believe in evidence-based research. But we need to take recommendations that we hear from our doctor, our support system, our dietitian, sometimes the media, and try it on like an outfit. We need to see how it fits for ourselves, if it's the right size, the right color. We need to be in tune with ourselves so we can advocate our needs, and we need to be present in our body, present in life, so we can successfully do so. My third message for you today is we need to prevent disease, not treat it. As someone with an autoimmune disease, I'm bound to get more. As someone with an autoimmune disease, I'm a magnet for another one, and another one, and another one. And I believe in the bottom of my heart I was meant to have type 1 diabetes to pave the way for others to make it less hard. But my spark, my fire, It didn't come from just my type 1 diabetes. It has come from witnessing the complications this disease has done to my dad. Now, my dad is still here today, but it's not without a fight. And his sister, my aunt, a woman who gave me hope that I could successfully have children as a woman with type 1 diabetes, is not. Now, type 1 diabetes isn't just one devastating disease. I'm at 10 times the risk for heart disease. I'm 4 times the risk for cancer. I'm 3.5 times risk for kidney disease, 80% risk of vision impairment, increased risk for cognitive decline, and a life cut short by a decade. But my message today is to turn up the volume on functional nutrition, is to turn up the volume on getting to the root of the problems and defy the odds. I'm going to defy the odds for my parents, for my children, for my husband. I'm going to defy the odds for my clients, and I'm going to help defy the odds for you. In the bottom of my heart, I know I was meant to have type 1 diabetes to pave the way for others, to make it less hard. And I hope my presentation today has inspired you to use your best instrument, your fork. Your fork is your most powerful tool for your health, and I hope it helps you unlock the potential of your future. On August 6, 2024, I got to change the world one day at a time, and I got to change it with you. Thank you.